in Algeria as a result of a meeting between the acting president Abdelkader Ben Salah and the opposition political parties. It appears that the presidential election could be postponed until a later time. After the resignation of Abdoulaye Idrissa Maïga, as expected, a new prime minister has been appointed head of the Malian government in the person of Boubou Cissé, former Malian Minister of Economy and Finance in outgoing government. These are our top stories. Stay tuned for more details in this newscast. Opposition political parties and unions took part in a meeting with the acting president Abdelkader Ben Salah, a meeting which did not unfortunately lead to a common ground. The appeal of the Algerian president to parties and political figures focused on the upcoming elections in the country. A meeting that appeared as an opportunity for reunification was shunned and boycotted by a large majority. The consultations were still open on Monday and were attended only by leaders from the ruling majority, lawyers and representatives of the civil society, mainly those very close to former President Bouteflika. Some believe that these consultations are inappropriate and off-topic and could be perceived as a provocation by the Algerians. For the Workers' Party, for example, these consultations are a maneuver aimed at imposing the continuity of the same system. The Workers' Party deems impossible to respond to such an invitation and participate in such a conference rejected by the Algerian people. Other parties do not approve of what they describe as agenda against the demands of the people. At the end of the meeting, the possibility of postponing the election for weeks, if necessary, is the most prominent recommendation. Yet it was scheduled on July 4th in a decree signed by the Algerian acting president. For 3 months after taking office, the president of Madagascar, Andry Rajoelina, summoned voters to a referendum on May 27th to revise the constitution he had passed in 2010. A draft constitutional review that will focus on 2 points, including the abolishing of the Senate and granting of the power to the regional authorities to avoid incurring additional expenses of his country. This constitutional review will be held on the same day as the legislative elections. It should be noted that the new provisions targeted by his revision are the promises of the campaign by the president who wishes to materialize them. The announcement elicited the reaction of his main opponent at the presidential election, former President Marc Ravalomanana, calling on representatives of other countries and those of the European Union and the African Union. He states, I quote, "What we ask ourselves is, does he abide by the Constitution? Because when the president is sworn, the first sentence he says is that he will have to abide by the Constitution. Why do they not follow the procedures? It is necessary to wait until 1 or 2 months after the establishment of the National Assembly before one can call the voters to referendum." The current constitution in Madagascar was adopted in 2010 under the transition chaired by Andry Rajoelina after the overthrow by the army of former President Marc Ravalomanana. He was appointed to replace Abdoulaye Idrissa Maïga, who resigned following a wave of protest from the political class and a vote of censure tabled at the National Assembly by the opposition members of parliament and the majority. Boubou Cissé, outgoing Minister of Economy and Finance, is sworn against all odds as the Prime Minister by President Ibrahim Boubacar Keïta. His appointment comes in a particular context less than a month after the killing of 160 Pearl civilians in the center of the country and a series of demonstrations against state management. He will therefore face many challenges, including security, with an upsurge of attacks in the center of the country and peace agreement that is barely implemented. It is now up to him to form a very inclusive government, according to an official statement from the presidency. As for President Ibrahim Boubacar Keïta, the new entrant must insist on the need to put Mali above all. How can this be achieved in a country increasingly threatened by terrorism and divided by intercommunal violence? The young economist of 45 years has his hands full, but has strong experience. He benefited from different governmental teams he was part of. He is expected to do a lot more to bring back the serenity among Malians. India conducts the third of 7 phases of its gigantic parliamentary elections, the largest in history, spread over nearly 6 weeks for logistical reasons. Nearly 190 million of the 900 million voters in India are expected to vote their members of parliament in 117 constituencies, mainly in the west and southwest. This phase is the largest of the polls. The last day of the voting will be held on May 19th.
I want a Prime Minister who is very strong for the country, who likes to have development for the country, and especially for different parts of India which are not yet developed.
Excited to redeem the right of voting, which we've been all waiting for, and especially the new government would be able to make a change.
Hindu nationalist leader Narendra Modi, who is seeking a second 5-year term as head of Indian state, voted in his home state of Gujarat in the west of the country on Tuesday, which he led before he came to power in New Delhi in 2014.
We have to live safely in India without any violence, like you know yesterday that in Sri Lanka. That problem the new government has to solve. A stable government has to come.
Participation was huge in the first 2 rounds of voting held on April 11th, and about 70% of voters came to vote. Each region of the country votes in turn because of the enormous size of the country in the first past the poll ballot, in which 443 MPs of the lower house of parliament will be elected. The counting of votes will be done on May 23rd. In the Philippines, an earthquake killed at least 11 people on Monday. Relief workers are trying to find dozens of survivors trapped in a building that collapsed the day before near Manila, the capital of the country, according to recent development. The earthquake, which caused extensive damage at Clark International Airport, the capital's secondary airport located on a former U.S. military base, shook buildings in Manila and provoked panic. A race against the clock was launched about 100 kilometers northwest of Manila, on the island of Luzon, to try somehow to clear, with construction equipment and jackhammers, the ruins of a collapsed 4-story building in which some 30 people could be stuck. The tremor has also damaged century-old churches, which recently welcomed a crowd of faithful for Easter masses in this 8% Catholic archipelago. In the capital of Philippines, cracks are still visible on some skyscrapers. The Philippines is on the Pacific Fire Belt, where the collision of tectonic plates causes frequent earthquakes and significant volcanic activity. The Professional Players Association of England unveiled yesterday Monday the list of 6 players shortlisted for the Player of the Year award. The number 10 Senegalese of Liverpool is on this list with others, namely Virgil van Dijk, Bernardo Silva, Raheem Sterling, Sergio Aguero and Eden Hazard. With a record of 18 goals in the Premier League and 22 goals in all competitions, Sadio Mane, who failed the World Cup with the Lions of Senegal, makes one of his best seasons. In contention for Champions League and Premier League titles. This season, Sadio Mane has even surpassed the record of Dembaba, who was the best Senegalese striker in the Premier League with 6 goals in the year 2016 and 2017 season with Newcastle. African double Golden Ball and best player last season in England, Mohamed Salah, is absent from this list. However, the Egyptian is one of the best strikers in the league with 19 goals, but the Senegalese is more decisive. The name of the winner will be unveiled at a ceremony scheduled on April 28th in London. In Algeria, as a result of a meeting between the acting president Abdelkader Ben Salah and the opposition political parties, it appears that the presidential election could be postponed until a later time. After the resignation of Abdoulaye Idrissa Maïga, as expected, a new prime minister has been appointed head of the Malian government in the person of Boubou Cissé, former Malian Minister of Economy and Finance in outgoing government. That's all for our newscast today. Stay tuned on Gabon 24 for more news.